In a place of peace, where the morning sun kissed the earth, Jesus worked quietly in his backyard. His hands touched the soil with care, planting life where others brought destruction. Every movement was calm, every breath steady, every moment filled with purpose. But beyond the silence, danger was already moving. 4 men approached from the distant hills, Roman soldiers armed with bows and arrows, sent with one mission: to hunt the man they feared. Leading them was Marcus, cold and ruthless. Beside him walked Lucius, sharp-eyed and silent. Titus, strong and violent, hungered for battle. And Cassius, the youngest, followed with doubt hidden in his eyes. Jesus sensed the shift in the wind. The peace of the garden had changed. Without panic, without fear, he rose to his feet. He walked toward an old wooden shed at the edge of the yard. Hidden beneath cloth and dust was a bow, crafted with strength, preserved in silence. He lifted it like a man prepared not for war, but for defense. Outside, the Roman soldiers reached the fence. Their boots crushed the earth. Their eyes searched every shadow. Jesus moved like the wind itself, taking cover behind stone and wood, watching their every step. Then suddenly, an arrow flew. It struck the wall beside him. The hunt had begun. Jesus drew his first arrow slowly, his eyes calm, his hands steady. For the peaceful man in the garden was no helpless prey. He was ready.
The silence was gone. The peaceful garden had become a battlefield. Behind the stone wall, Jesus remained calm, bow in hand, eyes fixed on every movement. Dust moved through the air, and the sound of footsteps closed in from every side. Marcus led with caution. Lucius searched the ground like a wolf on a trail. Titus burned with anger, hungry for revenge. Cassius followed, but fear had already entered his heart. Then Titus made his mistake. He stepped too far into the open. In one smooth motion, Jesus drew back the string and released. The arrow flew with deadly precision, striking Titus's armor and throwing the giant soldier backward into the dirt. Rage filled the yard. "Take cover!" Marcus shouted. The Romans scattered behind barrels and broken fence posts, but Jesus had already moved. He was never where they expected him to be, through the trees, behind the garden rows, across the shadows of the house. He moved like the wind. Lucius spotted movement and fired. The arrow missed by inches, crashing into the shed door. Jesus rolled behind cover, rose again, and answered with another shot. This time, Marcus felt the sting of humiliation as the arrow tore the crest from his helmet. Their leader had been marked. Titus roared and charged blindly toward the house corner, desperate to crush the man who outmatched them all. But when he turned the corner, no one was there. Then from above, Jesus stood on the rooftop ledge, calm as ever. He drew one more arrow, released. The shot shattered Titus's bow in his hands. The mighty warrior froze in disbelief. Before the others could react, Jesus vanished back into the shadows. Marcus stared into the broken yard and understood the truth. They had not come to hunt a victim. They had walked into the territory of a master defender. Shadows of the yard. The battle had changed. The peaceful backyard was now scarred by broken wood, scattered arrows, and torn earth. But in the middle of the chaos, Jesus moved with calm precision, silent as the wind. Marcus watched with growing frustration. Every plan was failing. Lucius studied the ground and whispered, "He circles us." Titus, bruised but furious, armed himself again. Cassius gripped his bow, but fear trembled in his hands. Marcus gave the order, "Two left, two right." The soldiers spread through the ruined garden, tightening the trap. But Jesus was already watching from the shadows behind stacked firewood. A branch snapped. Lucius reacted instantly and fired into the sound, but he struck only hanging cloth. Another trick. Jesus had moved again. Cassius stepped carefully into the garden rows, following fresh footprints pressed into the soil. One step, then another. Suddenly, the footprints ended. Cassius looked up. There stood Jesus in the distance, bow already raised. The young soldier froze, but instead of firing, Jesus lowered his weapon, offering mercy where others expected death. Cassius slowly backed away, shaken by what he had seen. Marcus shouted in anger, "Shoot!" Cassius hesitated. Lucius fired past him, sending an arrow toward Jesus. Jesus dove aside as the arrow struck the tree behind him. The moment of mercy had passed. Jesus rose and released a single arrow. It pinned Lucius's cloak to the fence, trapping him in place. Lucius struggled in humiliation. Then Titus charged through the center of the yard with reckless fury. Jesus reached for a hanging rope and pulled with force. A crashing wave of baskets and timber slammed into Titus, sending the brute crashing into the dirt once more. Silence followed, and then Marcus stepped forward into the open. Across the ruined garden, two men faced each other, both bows raised, both ready. The final reckoning had begun. The wind swept across the broken yard. Arrows lay buried in the soil. Wood was shattered. The garden, once filled with peace, now stood as the mark of battle. At the center of it all, two men faced each other. Marcus, the hardened commander. Jesus, calm, unshaken, and still. Their bows were drawn, their eyes locked. Neither moved. Around them, the others watched in silence. Cassius trembled behind the fence. Lucius tore himself free in anger. Titus struggled to rise from the wreckage. Then the wind changed. Dust rose between the two warriors. Marcus fired first. His arrow tore through the cloud, fast and deadly. But Jesus stepped aside at the final moment. The shot crashed into stone. Without hesitation, Jesus answered. His arrow flew low and true, slicing Marcus's bowstring clean apart. The commander looked down in disbelief. His weapon was finished, but Jesus did not fire again. Instead, he lowered his bow. Lucius, desperate and enraged, rushed forward with another arrow in hand. Jesus turned and released. The arrow struck the ground at Lucius's feet. A warning, nothing more. Lucius stopped cold. Cassius dropped his bow into the dirt. Titus, bruised and defeated, stared in silence. Marcus breathed heavily as pride drained from his face. Jesus stepped forward, calm as ever. Marcus reached slowly for the dagger at his belt. Jesus raised one final arrow. The yard froze. Marcus looked into the eyes of the man he came to destroy and saw strength greater than violence. Slowly, he removed his hand from the dagger. Then he nodded, one silent sign of respect. He ordered the retreat. The 4 Romans backed away and vanished beyond the fence line. Peace returned with their footsteps fading into the distance. Jesus planted his bow into the earth. Then he knelt beside a fallen seedling, lifted it gently, and placed it back into the soil. The wind swept across the broken yard. Arrows lay buried in the soil. Wood was shattered. The garden, once filled with peace, now stood as the mark of battle. At the center of it all, two men faced each other. Marcus, the hardened commander. Jesus, calm, unshaken, and still. Their bows were drawn, their eyes locked. Neither moved. Around them, the others watched in silence. Cassius trembled behind the fence.